Hi everyone, this is Professor Lovell, and today we are talking about culture, social construction, and socialization. So these three things all kind of come together in important ways, and so we're going to talk about them as a group. Um, and by the end of this, you should be able to know what is a culture, how does a culture construct our reality, and how are we socialized into that culture. So quickly, just what is a culture versus what is a society? A culture are the kind of elements that include the shared beliefs, values, and practices of a group of people, whereas the society itself is the group of people and the structures who share that community and culture. Um, so the uh, um, the United States would be a society, and then we would point out what are the cultural elements that we share. Clearly, not everyone in every society is going to include or adhere to all elements of culture. And we see on the right a graphic that shows the differences of how people even talk about soda, pop, Coke, or a soft drink in the US. And so we can break down cultures into smaller pieces. So we have a culture of the Western United States, of the Northeastern United States, of the South, and of the Midwest, right? So these all share a certain culture, and the societies need to have some kind of group of people who are regularly interacting. Um, if it's on a broader scale, they're at least interacting with other people in that society. And there's some structures in place that define the community, whether that's a government or a place of worship or some system of laws or regulations, right? So that would be more along the lines of a society. And then the culture would be those laws and regulations, the beliefs and the values. So, what makes up a culture? Social norms, as we've been talking about throughout the class. These are the beliefs and actions common to a specific culture. They can be formal, like laws, or they can be informal, things like, um, it's good to shake the hand of someone you meet. Social mores are the moral values and principles of that culture. So, for example, in the US, there is a big moral value about being patriotic. There are determined ways of how you should be patriotic. And when you break those social mores, like kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance, it creates a lot of uproar and frustration. Also, part of culture are the symbols and language. So, when we use emojis or we see road signs, those are something that most people in the United States culture are able to recognize, and we understand the meanings involved. This is similar with the language. We all have a shared language. Now, cultures construct our reality. So they help us to understand how, they give us meaning for what the world is, for how we should go about the world, and even create norms of how we should uh, define things in the world. A good example I like to use in class is I would point to a table and ask people what that is. So for right now, imagine you have a table. Why is it called a table? Um, why can't it be anything else? Why can't it be a chair? Why can't it be a door? Why can't it be part of a, elaborate um, obstacle course for a dog? These are all different ways of using that material, but in our culture, we have designated a idea for a table, and we accept that anything that resembles that idea is a table and should be used for it. So let's see how we go about creating reality. So this is called the social construction of reality. We start off with when groups of people come together, they often create meaning for various things, whether it's meaning for why the grass grows, meaning for why um, the sun comes up, meaning for the why we get sick, meaning for why people interact or how people interact, and similar things. These are all different meanings that we create through social interaction. The meanings, in order to be able to be preserved, are transcribed onto signs. Signs can be any number of languages, actions, or actual signs. So things like a street sign or a sign on top of a hospital or a logo or a totem or the cross for Christianity, or the Star of David for Judaism, and similar-ish signs like that. So signs generally take the form of language, of actions, and of specific signs or logos. Um, as these specifically languages and actions become habitualized, so as we start speaking the same way with other people, as we start coordinating our actions with other people that have the same meaning, these become institutionalized. So as we continue to do these over and over and over and over, they become the norm. And then we create systems and structures that influence those meanings and symbols for other people as well. So you yourself probably did not create the English language. However, you were born into learning the English language and accepting it as part of your language. If you're not from the US, when you came to the US, you were presented with a different institutionalization of reality and had to learn that language and learn the different values, meanings, and signs within the US culture. So, a great example of this is how in English we have a couple terms for rain there and snow. There's rain, there's sleet, there's snow. Some communities have it's like sun showers where it's raining while it's also the sun is out. We also have pour, like when it's pouring outside, or what's another word? Sprinkling, right? To determine different kinds of um, like the heaviness of rain and snow. Um, in other cultures, they have even more names for snow and for rain. These are because their reality, with the amount of snow they have or with the ways in which they interact with the snow, are so different than ours. They've created a whole meaning system and language around it that they can better identify different kinds of snow, different kinds of water, different kinds of air. Um, Even though the actual material itself is the same, they've created a language system around it that's different than other communities. As they have to interact with it more and more and more, they need to better define it and describe it for the purposes of their interaction. So this is the institutionalization of our meanings and our symbols and our language and our actions. And that is the social construction of reality. Here is an example. The social construction of healthcare. When you are There are many meanings for what it means to be sick. Um, for example, in a lot of periods of time, women were seen as more likely to be quote unquote dirty or impure because they menstruated. We know today that menstruation is a very normal part and actually is an essential part of the preservation of the human race. But because people believed menstruation to be something dirty or unclean, women were often seen as the unclean sex. So this is an example of meanings of illness that have evolved or changed over time. And even today, there are debates over the kinds of illnesses that exist. We have new categories of diseases coming up. Within the last 10 years, we can think of things like fibromyalgia, of chronic fatigue, of there's debate still on anxiety, ADHD, of dyslexia and how those should be defined and described. Homosexuality was defined as a disease in the before the 1980s, and only recently, like relatively recently, has it become a identity and a normal possibility of human life rather than a illness. So even the meanings into sickness are different by culture and by time. Then because of this, we've created different symbols of illness and health. The way we talk about sexuality, the way we talk about menstruation, the way we talk about ADHD and mental illness have also shifted along with the meanings by which each of those conditions are described. Now, over time, as those languages and symbols are repeated, it becomes institutionalized. And today we have a whole system of healthcare in the United States and worldwide that is based on those meanings. If you were around 50 years ago and you were gay, you could have been admitted into the healthcare system as an insane patient. Today, if you are homosexual, you likely are not going to be admitted in the US as an insane patient. And so we've created a way of seeing and interacting with the world, and that it changes over time and in different places. So this is an example of how we've socially constructed what is called healthcare, what is called wellness, and what is called illness. Now that we understand how past societies have created and socially constructed our realities, we need to understand how we are brought into that reality, and this is called socialization. So a couple of terms that you are defining this week as part of your discussion posts. Socialization is the ways that people come to know and understand social norms and expectations, values, and beliefs. Social norms are the visible and invisible rules of conduct. So this is what you are being socialized into accepting and acting. Agents of socialization are those people or groups who provide the learning experiences for adopting social norms, and this is usually in the way of social control. So we can think about, for example, when you are in the classroom and you raise your hand to speak, if you didn't raise your hand to speak, the teacher might perform some negative social control by asking you to raise your hand and not talk when she is talking. Or if you do raise your hand, the teacher would perform a positive form of social control by saying, Bobby, yes, your turn, and ask you to speak. So that would be examples of negative and positive social control. And this happens throughout for most of our actions and beliefs. You are brought into a religious system and explained how to believe and what to believe. That's not necessarily saying that you can't or that the beliefs are incorrect, but we do that in a process of socialization. The norms of belief and acting are also part of that socialization. How we even talk about our religions and our beliefs are socialized into us. Agents of socialization are anyone around us who can perform any kind of social control. So even when we're on the bus, if we do something that is inappropriate, for example, if you're making out with your boyfriend, girlfriend, or other significant other, and people look at you and or ask you to stop, that is a form of social control in which the other people on the bus are trying to get you to learn and accept the social norms of not making out on the bus. I'm going to show you a clip to give you another example. This, if you are not familiar, this is from Legally Blonde. It is a story about a woman who was in undergraduate. She was the president of her sorority, was well known for being up to date on fashion and beauty, and was well versed in that kind of world. Her boyfriend decided to go to law school and told her that they needed to break up because they were just from different they were just too different, and that she was a fashion girl and he was going to be a lawyer, and so they needed to break up. She decided to work hard and get into law school, to show him that and to like regain his love. And this is her first day of class at Harvard Law School. And so as we watch this clip, look for what social norms are being enforced, who are the agents of socialization, what social control was being used, both positive and negative, and who was being socialized.
The law is reason free from passion. Does anyone know who spoke those immortal words?
Yeah. Aristotle.
Are you sure?
Yes?
Would you be willing to stake your life on it?
I think so.
What about his life?
I don't know.
Well, I recommend knowing before speaking. The law leaves much room for interpretation, but very little self-doubt. And you...
Okay, in that short part of the clip, we already see some norms being enforced. So the teacher wants her students to be sure about any kind of statements they make, to the point where she says you should be willing to bet another person's life on it. That is of social control, and hopefully that will never be a experience you need to go through. The teacher was the form of social control, and she used both positive and negative versions. He raised his hand in the class and she called on him, and so that was a form of positive social control. And then she used a kind of Hippocratic, or not Hippocratic, Socratic questioning method to get him to be only answer questions if he was completely confident in his answers. That might be seen as a negative form because he was made to feel uncomfortable and unsure of himself. Now, he was not the only one being socialized here. The rest of the class was watching this interaction and was also learning they should only speak if they were 100% confident of the answer. Let's see what else is being taught in this class.
Well, right. It was Aristotle. Now, I assume all of you have read pages 1 through 48 and are now well-versed in subject matter jurisdiction. Who can tell us about Gordon versus Steele? Let's call on someone from the hot, sir. Al Woods.
Oh, actually, I wasn't aware that we had an assignment.
Vivian Kensington, do you think it's acceptable that Ms. Woods is not prepared?
No. I don't.
Would you support my decision to ask her to leave class and to return only when she is prepared?
Absolutely.
Miss Kensington, did diversity jurisdiction exist in them?
Okay, so here we see again a couple of different ways in which she was social, or which socialization was happening in this class. Um, the norm of being prepared for the class was enforced by the teacher asking Belle Woods to leave. Also, she the teacher brought in another student to act as a agent of socialization as well. The social control, as I said, was getting her to leave. We also saw that being prepared, or like having your materials out, was a social norm expected in the classroom. After the teacher said, you have all read pages 1 through 49 and are familiar with X issue, everyone started pulling out their textbooks and their notes. Elle Woods was the only one who didn't, and that is one of the reasons why the teacher called on her, was to start enforcing that social control. Again, we have to remember that everyone in this interaction was being socialized because they were witnessing and realizing the penalties for not abiding by the social norms of the classroom. Okay, hopefully this was helpful to understand how social control works, how people socialize others into various situations, and different agents of socialization. If you have any questions, please let me know, and good luck on your work this week. Thank you.